Hello, everybody. This is Wesley Campbell, and we are on Conversions, episode, I think, 11. And I have in the studio today, all the way from Austin, Texas, one of the most incredible, happy, jolly, fun, energetic, dynamic individuals that I've almost ever met in my life, and that happens to be Rick Pino. Come on, say hello.
What an intro, Wesley. Come on. Jolly, happy, best. Come on. I am those things. I love having fun. I'm happy, man. I'm fired up. It's wonderful to be on here with you today, Wesley.
Thank you. And I always tell him, he knows this, but my best friend who I went to Bible college with was David Ruiz, and we started a church together, and he was a worship leader. And the mannerisms and the persona of Rick Pino reminded me so much of David that before I even met Rick, even for a day, I already felt like I loved him because I loved David Ruiz. And so that's just a little background. And before we get into the conversions, I want everybody to share this all over the place. I want to remind you that you can get your Shiloh Global app and hear all the other incredible conversion stories. And and where do they find you, Rick Pino?
They can find me at worshipcoach.com. We have an online mentorship program for worshipers with literally almost 600 lessons on all things worship. Myself, Stephanie Gretzinger, Maverick City, Carrie Job, Cody Carnes, a bunch of others. We are coaches in your worship journey, and it's called worshipcoach.com.
And I just heard you tell my wife when we were getting on this program, you're doing worship coaching now, Saturdays or like sessions. How many thousand are taking your courses?
There's a lot right now. The Lord's breathing. I think a little bit of context real quick, Wesley. So we have a lot of worship leaders. Paul said we have 10,000 teachers, not many fathers. I say we have 10,000 worship leaders, not many worship mothers or worship fathers. So I saw this big open space. Look, people are writing, people are singing, but not many people are training and equipping when it comes to the place of worship. So we actually have daily, it's not just Saturday. So Worship Coach is an online, basically it's the Netflix of all things worship. You want to learn about anything worship, theology, lessons, vocal lessons, all of it. It's on Worship Coach. And about once a month, we are hosting large gatherings where up to 40,000 people a month are coming through our trainings.
40,000?
Yes, up to 40,000. So like once a month, we're hosting an online digital stadium gathering and raising up tens of thousands of worshipers.
Shut down the church. Who said COVID has muzzled the church? Your megaphone has gotten 40,000 times larger than it ever was. Come on.
Come on. Yep. Yeah, it's going cool. Worshipcoach.com.
Worshipcoach.com. Now, just as you were coming on, I overheard you telling, now you're a family man, are you not?
Yes, I am.
How many kids?
We have 3 wonderful kids, 11-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 3-year-old son, and they are precious, all of them.
And you're just having a, so tell me an anecdote from your 3-year-old. From the text.
You want me to tell the story I told before? So my 3-year-old is potty training right now.
Okay.
And absolutely hilarious. So, you know, he's doing his number on there and he's going number 2 and he's trying to learn how it all works. And he lands up putting a whole entire roll of toilet paper in the toilet. I don't know where he found this, but he got a roll of painter's tape. He found some of my painter's tape, unrolled the whole thing, put it in there. And then I just found this out too this morning. We asked him, because we had to have a plumber come. It's a whole ordeal. And we had to have a plumber come and he's like, dude, there's something in there. I don't know what, it's not just toilet paper. It's not just poo. There's something in there. And we asked him, we said, Leo, did you put anything else in there? And he looks at us going, no, I didn't. But then the nanny tells us, our nanny, Carly, she came to us afterwards. She's laughing. She goes, you know what he whispered in my ear when you asked him, did you put anything else? He whispered in my ear, I did put some toys in there, but I don't want to tell them because they look a little grumpy.
Now
So
that's a true son right there.
he's learning, he's learning how to be potty trained, and I'm learning love, and it's all good, man.
That's hilarious. That's a true son right there. So,
Yep.
and as we get going, you once took a Nazarite vow, right?
Yes, I
For how
took
many
a
years?
Nazarite vow when I was 15 years old. I mean, I don't know if you want to just jump into
No,
it,
no, no. We'll get
Wesley,
to
but
that. But
I took a Nazarite vow, but I'll save some of the details for the
yeah.
conversation here coming
So,
up.
so you also have a strange resemblance to a famous movie star
A
called
good-looking movie star.
Jack Black. And your good friend Sean
Yes,
Boyk loves to play up on that. I heard that you were
yes.
giving out autographs at an airport one time.
Yes.
Tell
You
me.
know what it is? It's terrible because both Sean and my wife will call me Jack in public, and some people think I'm actually him.
So were you giving out autographs?
Yeah, I have actually before, honestly, like getting off of a plane one time, my wife and Sean were both telling people that I was Jack Black, and I think one person asked for an autograph. So there you go.
Okay, let's start. Now, when were you born? Where were you born? What was your family like?
Sure. I was born in 1984, December of 1984, in a small little town called Socorro, New Mexico. So my grandparents were missionaries to the Native Americans in New Mexico for, man, probably close to 40 years. And
Really?
at the time, my parents were younger. They were living by them. So I was born in New Mexico. And when I was 5 years old, my parents moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. And I basically was raised in Vegas until 18 before I left for
Okay, so
college.
your grandparents are missionaries. Were
Yep.
they first generation Christians?
Yes, both of them were first generation Christians. Yep. I'm sorry, I take that back. My grandfather was second generation. His father was first generation. And then my grandfather and my grandmother, he was second and she was first generation.
And they became 40-year veteran missionaries.
Yes, now they're in their mid 80s. They actually live here in Austin now, but when they were young and they spent their strength pastoring and ministering to Native Americans. Yep.
Wow. So that's your father's parents?
That's my mom's parents.
Okay, so obviously she grew up with the gospel.
Yep.
Okay, and
My mom did. My dad did not. So my both. Now here's the thing, to give a little context to my grandparents, they got saved under kind of an old school idea that, it was ministry first and family second. So even though my mom grew up with the gospel, quote unquote, it was a little bit of a dysfunctional upbringing because my grandparents, it was just the best they knew, but they were doing ministry so much that the family was getting neglected. On my dad's side, my dad actually comes from a little bit of a broken home. His parents got together when they were young. His mom had him when she was young, and they got divorced, and there was a lot of issues there as well. But the redemption of God in the whole story is that my grandparents on my mom's side, who were the missionaries, they started getting their act together, so to say, and my dad and mom both got saved and met underneath their ministry.
wow. So
Yep.
obviously now you're born into this family dynamic of salvation and God and full-time ministries,
I was
etc.
in the pews growing. I mean, some of my first memories were church. And here's a cool fact that a lot of people don't know, Wesley, is I was actually, so my grandparents were saved under the Church of God in Christ movement. So we were all in black church, man. Growing up, like we didn't know anything different except for Kojic, Church of God in Christ, black church culture. So to the time I was probably 11, it was all black church culture. And I'm so thankful for that because, man, nobody does the high praises like the black church. You know what I'm saying? They know how to break it open, learned about tarrying, learned about praying through, learned about the high praises, shout, dance, clap, sing. And a lot of that Kojic heritage was passed on. But man, some of my first memories in the pews,
Now, Church of God in Christ?
Yep.
Okay, now do they have they're not the anti-musical ones, anti-musical instruments.
No, that's Church of God. So Church of God, at least had been, I don't know if they still are, but Church of God was anti-music. Church of God in Christ is the black church movement who were absolutely very much so for music.
So you were raised in
going for
this atmosphere. It was just happening.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so tell us what are your first remembrances of as a child of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit?
Man, I will tell you this. When I was a kid, another one of my first memories ever, I remember just being young, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, literally some of my very, very first memories. I've always felt the nearness of God on my life. I have always felt special. I have always felt called. Of course, I didn't have language for it back then, but I have always felt just the face of God shining on me, the favor of God, the calling out, the hand of God on my life. So those were some of my first memories. Of course, growing up and starting going through church, going through adolescence, I wasn't really giving myself to the Lord. In my early teen years, I just my parents went to church and I kind of went to church too, and it was whatever. And about 15 years old, this is where my salvation experience actually happened. I'm 15 years old. Go ahead.
You're following, you're in church, you like the music, you pray at night when you go to sleep, you feel the presence of God, you feel that God's all around you, but it's kind of you're just kind of there. It's not
Yep.
aggressively taking hold of you yet.
Yep. So I'm 15 years old and somebody invites me to this youth gathering. You're going to smile at this. I don't know if you know this story. Somebody invites me to this youth gathering called Rock the Nations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is early 2000. It's before the mall in September, but it's early 2000s. There's a youth gathering moving all over the country. They're mobilizing. What's that?
Rusty Carlson.
Yes, and they're mobilizing the country for an upcoming gathering later on that year. And I'll never forget, Wesley, I go into the service and there was a band up there called Pocket Full of Rocks. And they had this song called, let it rain, open the floodgates of heaven, let it rain. And they were singing this song, man. And for the first time ever, it wasn't just my dad's God or my mom's God or my parents' God. It was like my soul became awakened to, He is my God.
Wow.
And my heart was open because of the presence of God that was so strong in this place. I was undone by the worship. And I'll never forget, the guy kept coming up, Rusty kept coming up saying, keep worshiping, keep worshiping. Our guest speaker, his plane just landed. He's going to be a little late. We're going to keep worshiping. So we're going deeper. We're going deeper. We're going deeper.
There's been a Lou sighting.
Yes. So before I know it, this guy comes in. He's got a mustache. He's rocking. Oh, and I didn't know at the time, but it's Lou Engle. I'm 15 years old. And Lou starts talking about John the Baptist, in a voice crying out in the wilderness, a Nazarite who gave himself to God in a special way. And Wesley, I'll tell you right now, I'm even getting moved, even just remembering the testimony.
Let it rain.
Oh yeah, it's that whole thing. And there I am in the midst of this, and I just felt, it's kind of like everything all of a sudden made sense.
Wow.
And I said, God, I'm not just giving myself to you. I have been yours. You have called me to be yours. And in that moment, I responded and said, I am yours forever. Wesley, I dove for the altar and I gave my life to Christ as a 15-year-old, but not just that. I began to go on a long Nazarite vow. I committed. That's actually why I still have long hair. I was a Nazarite for many, many, many years.
Well, when I met you, you were still walking in the Nazarite vow.
Still am, of course, but very, very, very intently for a long time. Obviously still am, but yeah.
Wow. So that service, you dedicated yourself, but you didn't just dedicate yourself. You said, I'm going to take the Nazarite vow. I'm not going to cut my hair. I'm not going to have any alcohol. I'm going to dedicate myself for prayer. I'm going
And
to
you know
be
what it was? It wasn't just the outward things. It wasn't just don't cut your hair, no alcohol. It was like, I am going to be consecrated as a holy one, set apart to God. Now, of course, have never been perfect in that, but the sincerity of my heart was, I am wholly yours in a special and consecrated way.
wow. So you're only 15.
I was 15, man.
Okay, I was not a Christian until I was outside of high school. What was it like to become a consecrated one while you're still a teenager in high school? Tell me about that.
Well, you know me, I'm fired up, right? So instantly I go from, kind of on the fence with God, whatever, to on fire. I'm ablaze for God. I was a sophomore in high school at this time, and that week I went and I started a Bible school at my high school, a Bible club at my high school.
What's a sophomore mean? What's a sophomore mean?
10th grade. I was in grade 10.
Okay.
So I'm in grade 10. I'm fired up, and you know me, I'm all in, man. So I go in, I get a couple of my buddies together. I said, listen, you're rolling with God now. You're rolling with me now. Let's do this. We're going to get the whole high school saved. So we started with a couple of us, and it grew and grew and grew. And man, we just started going for it, evangelizing the high school, preaching, worshiping all over the place. And
Really?
it was over from there.
This is the year 2000 then.
This is year 2000.
This is the first bit, the big the call DC. It's what's the guy Jason Upton starting. It's the revival. The worship leaders are going out everywhere. And you just now, were you a worship guy yet at this time?
I see, because like we mentioned, because I'd grown up in it from a young age, I had already been leading worship since I was 11. So, by 15, I'd already been kind of leading worship on and off for about 4 years. And by this point, I was like, I'm going for it. But of course, in these days, like today with the internet, you can aspire to be a worship leader. In those days, pre-internet, you couldn't just pop on somebody's Instagram and go, oh, I want to be a worship leader like Rick Pino. You couldn't do that. It was just like, man, I don't know what this thing is, but we're going to worship, we're going to pray, and we're just going to go for it. And that's what we were doing.
So that's how you got started by doing the stuff. You were on high school, calling kids, and because somebody had to do it, you did it.
That's exactly what it
What
was.
was the instrument you played? Piano or guitar?
At the time, I was playing a lot of guitar, a lot of acoustic guitar.
Okay, because that was the easiest to learn. Did you play piano from what age?
I had not started playing piano until 2004. So I didn't start playing piano until I was 19.
Wow. So is this when you learned to play the guitar?
I started learning guitar when I was 11. My youth pastor, he basically said, look, we need a youth worship leader. You're leading Wednesday night. And I'm like, I'm 11, like, I don't even know how to play. I don't know how to sing. And he put his guitar in my hand, man. And he just said, here's a D chord. You're leading this Wednesday. And that's kind of how it started.
That's amazing. So again, it's the prodigies raised in the church with a context have brought forth all these great worship musicians, these musicians really, and singers to the world. Okay, so you're 15, you got this Bible study going, you're just rocking it, and what happens? Tell me a couple milestones between then and
a couple of big moments after that, I go off to Bible school. Okay, I go to a Bible school called Christ for the Nations in Dallas, Texas. You guys have been there, Wesley. And it's just a hub, man. The Voice of Healing movement, Gordon Lindsay, William Branham, all these incredible, Oral Roberts, of course, all of these incredible healing revivalists. There was a movement called Voice of Healing, and the scribe of it all was named Gordon Lindsay. He was documenting everything in a newsletter called The Voice of Healing. He broke off and started a Bible school. It's called Christ for the Nations. I go there. This is many years later after that movement. I go to Bible school. I'm 18. There's a guy there named Klaus Kuhn. He's a worship leader. And there's another young girl who is there at the school named Carrie Job, who many people listening No, she's a very famous worship leader now. Klaus sees Carrie and I and basically pulls us under his wing and starts mentoring us in worship. At the same time, I'm being mentored in the prophetic by a man named James Maloney, who I'm sure you know as well.
Yeah.
James Maloney was one of my professors. So I've got James Maloney mentoring me in the prophetic. Klaus Kuhn is mentoring me in worship. And then another prophet named Sam Brassfield is also, you know, Pastor Sam. Sam is also mentoring me. So right at the right moment, as an 18-year-old kid, I'm a teenager, God brings these very, very important fathers into my life to begin to breathe on those embers of, I didn't know it at the time, but a big part of what I was called to do.
Wow. Now, I heard you telling stories sometimes about, was it Gordon Lindsay's wife? How she would, who was the older?
Yeah, Freda Lindsey, Mom Lindsay, yep.
And she would just take you young guys to the woodshed, eh?
Oh my gosh, dude, she was so feisty. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but at the end of her life is right whenever I got there to Christ for the Nations. Like I said, I'm 18 years old. At this point, I think she's like 91. And this lady is still going on the road, like still preaching, still ministering. And I was like I became the village worship leader. Anything that needed worship, I was the guy. So I'm leading worship at everything on campus as a student. And it was so, you know, at the time I thought it was kind of lame, but looking back now, I'm so honored. They asked me to go on the road with Mom Lindsay. So I went on the road, which is hilarious because, bro, she wasn't flying anywhere. She was driving. So it was another guy and his wife. They were in the front seat, and then me and Mom Lindsay were in the back. And the whole time, she's telling me revival stories and how Gordon used to do it, and you know how this guy did it, and this gal did it, and this person laid hands. And I'm just, as a kid, I'm getting worn out by this quote unquote old lady. Just, okay, lady, I get it, awesome. But now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have paid more attention. You know, it's just crazy to think. So yeah, I for about a semester, I was traveling around with Mom Lindsay and the Bozarths, you know, him and his wife. And we were going around doing seminars, man. It was hilarious.
You're an 18-year-old with long hair on a
I just started growing my hair, yep.
Unmarried, and you're with a 91-year-old revivalist Bible college founder, and she just talking your ear off, and you're going 5 hours
yes.
to Texas.
Yes.
Wow, no wonder I never found you till later.
Exactly, man.
Now, did you know Sean Foyt yet?
No, I hadn't met Sean yet. So Sean and I met years later and obviously became very close. But Sean, I mean, this was 2003 at this point. I think Sean and I met in 06 or 07. So it was still a few years before I met Sean.
So, how old were you when you got married?
I was 23 years old and my wife was 22. So my wife and I met at Bible school there at Christ for the Nations. And I've been crazy from day one, right? So I wasn't even graduated Bible school yet. And I was already leading missions trips all over the world, just going for it as a young teen, 19 years old, building teams, taking them all over the world. And my wife somehow came on one of those missions trips and I fell in love with her.
Really?
Yep.
How long did you last before you got married?
We lasted about 2 years. It was 2 years too long. I think we should have got married right away, but she was young and she was scared. I was young and immature and way too wild. So we were like 19, 20, and we landed up getting married at 22 and 23.
Wow, that's awesome. That's pretty close to Stacy and I, although she was 2 days before she was 20 when I married her.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I met her when she was 16, a week into being 16. So anyway, that's another story when we do our conversion.
Incredible. Yeah.
So you got married and then you traveled the world. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was interesting because when we got married in 06, I believe it was. Yeah. sorry, no, we got married in 2008, but right about 2006. So right when my wife and I got together and, we started dating was when the Lord started really opening up like real doors for me and our ministry and whatever. I got reconnected to Lou Engle at this point, and I started, helping out with some of the calls at the time, 777, some of those pretty significant events. And man, we were just going for it. So our worship and our ministry and our travels began. And right in the beginning, a year and a half into that, my wife and I got married. So people have asked us many times, like, how do you guys do what you do? Like, you guys do so much and you travel. It seems like you have a great marriage, and we do. You guys have wonderful kids. You're doing all this stuff. We didn't know any different, man. We just this has always been normal for us, just to high capacity, high level, fired up. Let's go. And so that's how it started.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, right now, today, you have a community, do you?
Yes, multiple, but yes.
What'd you say?
I said multiple communities, but yes.
Okay, so you don't run a church per se.
Not a local church.
You run a community, which is an expression.
Yep.
And how many people would you say are working, kind of their primary function is working in the ministry?
Man, well, it depends on which community you're talking about. So we had raised up a community, a movement called Heart of David Movement, and that was basically a worship and missions expression that in the past 6.5 years had grown to about 100 different cities. Each community was ranging from 15, 20 people upwards to 400 or 500 people. So that's a community. We actually just passed that community on to the local leaders because of the other stuff we're doing now with Worship Coach. Worship Coach has become this online community. And honestly, there's really no way to tell the exact number with that community because, like I mentioned earlier, some of these monthly gatherings are tens of thousands of people, and this is consistent every month. So wow. There's a lot of people jumping into, and the Lord's been sweet, just connecting, jumping into to what we're doing.
How many people would you say are, actively they do this full time and they're supported because of the expansion that they have to, the amount of work that has to be done? How many people do you have like that?
Sure. Like on my staff, yeah. I think we have about 9 or 10 people total on my staff, on paid staff.
That's not that many. So you're a lean, mean machine.
We're going for it, man.
That's amazing. So I'm going to end this pretty quickly here. So just a couple things. Because you were raised in God for so long, do you remember any dramatic times when somehow you had something, where you just stood back and went, whoa, thank you?
Which of the thousands of times, right? Wesley, you and I are a little spoiled, man. We've got to taste and see around the world in many nations and many movements and many meetings. But I will say this, the highlights have all been wonderful, but I was just talking with Stacy on a different broadcast before the one you and I are doing, and we are talking about just the consistency of the anchor of God in my life. I would honestly and sincerely say, in the midst of all the cool moments and nations and things that I've seen God do, the biggest woe of my life has been His presence. Like I said, from my first memories until today, His presence being near to me and just feeling the hand of God and the face of God shining on me from day one. That has been my biggest woe, memory.
So I think I'm correct in this. It said when David became the leader of Judah, he was 30 years old. And then 7 years later, he became king over all Israel. the 10 northern tribes plus the 2 southern tribes. That would make him 37. How old are you?
He was
Rick?
37. I'm 36.
Okay, you're almost the age of David when he became king over the whole world.
I'm almost there.
I have a great preach on this called, the Tabernacle of David and worship and all that. And I say this, I said, David became king over his whole world. He was in charge. God loved him. He could do anything he wanted. If you could do anything you wanted and, money was no problem, what would you do? Now, David started the tabernacle. First thing he did. What do you want to do, Rick Pino?
Wesley, I'm telling you, I've been a David my whole life. And if I could just share a little secret prayer of my life consistently over the decades, my biggest heart cry, and the Lord knows this, is I'm just trying to get in the room with him. I don't care about how many people we stand in front of. I love and I'm thankful we get to train so many people, but I am not kidding you, man. I don't want just moments with God or hours with God. I want days with God. I love God, and I want that's the end of it all for me, is being able to have that place where I'm with him day and night, night and day. And it's the end of the book of Revelation where man and God are tabernacling together. In fact, just recently, I've even adjusted my schedule to where I'm trying to spend not just moments or hours. I'm slowly stepping into that where I want to spend days with God. Wow. And that's my end, man. Just like David, that's it for me too. I want to be in his presence.
Wow. Rick Pino, you know what? I just can't help saying this, but I love you. I say that about
I love you too.
But I love your heart. I love you, what you're doing. We don't get to do as much together as we want to, especially since COVID. But this is fantastic. And I want to say to everyone that's listening to this, David in Psalm says, once I was young and now I am old. And I remember being in my 30s. I remember when I turned 33, the age of Christ at 30. And I always I wanted to do so much. I wanted to accomplish so much. And I always remember, approaching this one businessman, and I asked him, I says, I need $1 million. And if we had $1 million, we could do this. And I had the whole budget and how we could expand the kingdom of God. And I didn't get the $1 million. But today it's my delight to help others. And I just want to say, if you're listening to this, send Rick Pino $1 million. Why? This man has the fire and the passion, and he knows what to do with it that'll translate into bringing the presence of God all over the world. I mean, how many countries have I heard you say 80?
Almost 80, 79, yeah.
Okay, I've been 70, and I'm twice as old as you almost. Not quite, but pardon me. So we want to see everyone that's listening to this, look up Rick Pino, get on his, you've got an app, do you, Rick?
Worshipcoach.com. We're all over social media. Yeah, we're all over the place.
So get on there, and I just want you to say, right now, just take Rick out for supper. Send him $100. Send him a gift for his staff, because I want you to get behind this guy. I used to fundraise for the calls and for children at risk all over the world. And if you're listening to this, I want you to consider prayerfully give to this ministry, because they are an investment into the worldwide presence of God. So Rick Pino, thank you so much. Last words?
Something that you just said, by the way, Wesley, that's very kind of you. And I obviously wasn't expecting that, and, very kind of you to say that. But, something that you just said reminded me when you were saying, the psalmist David said, once I was young, now I'm old. Your story about being young in your 30s and saying, man, we could just go and do these exploits. And I was talking with my wife recently. This is my last thought. I was talking with my wife recently, and I just came to the realization, I'm still young too, right? I'm 35, 36 now. And I came to this realization, like, you know what? When I was younger, like in my 20s, I wanted to shake the globe. I wanted to shake the planet. But now, if that's a byproduct, let it be a byproduct. All I want to do now is just be close to God. That's all I want to do. And everything else is a byproduct, man. So that's my last thought, man. I want to live in that place of his presence. No matter how many we get to impact or whatever, I'm a lover of his presence first. I'm a king, I'm a prophet, but I am a priest first. Just like David, right? Prophet, priest, and king. But I'm a priest first, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rick. We appreciate that. Now, you guys that are listening to this, check out what the Spirit is saying to the church. Stacy interviewed Rick on that, and he has a lot to say about the Spirit speaking to the church. Look at our website, wesleystacycampbell.com, and so many things to catch up on. So God bless you all, and thank you for joining us for Conversions Podcast.